see ads of yourself pop up for just a pilot.
This show doesn't exist.
Fred and George.
It's correct.
Oh, Fred and George?
Yes, there you go.
Fred and George.
That's what I'm here for.
Right.
Is that their real names or those
No, that's
character
their
names?
characters'
names.
That is what.
James and Oliver Phelps, if you wanted to get.
Oh, look at you.
That's right. That is their
That's
names.
why we brought Clark onto the show, so he can fact check things for us.
There you go.
That's
Love
pretty.
it.
That's pretty much it. Brandon, I see we're already recording.
Yep.
All right. So we're gonna go straight into this. This week we speak with head brewer and co-founder of Old Irving Brewing, Trevor Rose Hamlin. This is episode 72 of The Malting Hour.
What's the hats on the hops? Got yeast and beats. This the Malting Hour where we talk about our drink and tell you what we think every other week. And if we get drunk, well, we might slur our speech. Got the gift of gab, the friends you wish you had. Join us for a drink, join us for a laugh. Time is never wasted, where you getting wasted. The Malting Hour here, people take your places. People take your places. People take your home.
Welcome to The Malting Hour. I'm one of your hosts, Tony Golick, joined always with
Brandon Winninger.
and to my right, sitting way too close.
Clark Fettridge.
Why did you seem so scared about that?
Maybe I should get a little further away.
I think so.
Sorry.
Well, this is I don't know when this is coming out. We have so many. I think we're going to push this one up a little bit, but this might be our very first episode of 2022, depending on where our schedule aligns here. So this is exciting because we're sitting here in the neighborhood where actually between all three of us. This is kind of like a central location between the three of us. We are sitting inside Old Irving Brewing, and we finally made it here. And who are we joined with today?
Trevor Rose Hamlin, head brewer and co-founder of OYB.
Fantastic. Would you like to throw your name into the hat as well? You can just jump on. It's all right.
Hey there, this is Matthew, sales director. Sales director and liquid mage for Old Irving.
The good news is that the two mics between you guys actually pick up a lot. So this is going to be fun for me to edit later. But yeah, we're excited to be here. For those of you who listen to the show, we have had a handful of Old Irving beers and
Just a handful.
More
I think
than
it's
a handful.
little bit more than a handful.
I want to make it sound like we're obsessed, but we kind of are. Clark, was on your list for your top beers for 2021? Was that this year or last year?
Yeah, was it?
Well, we'll have to go to the tape. We'll have to go to the. I believe a Triple Beezer was one of my top ones. So.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to say that just because he asked you right in front of us.
No, I wouldn't have asked had it not just been fresh in my head because we just recorded it yesterday. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but yeah, it was one of his.
Oh, you're right. Last year was.
Yeah.
It was another triple, very heavy
IPA. He just likes drinking your big old beers.
That's cool.
Actually, one of our one of our favorite beers from you guys is the Prost, or the Cinnamon Prost.
Cinnamon Prost.
So good.
Hilarious beer.
We had done kind of a version of that. What was we toast?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we kind of tried to do something like that, and it was okay. When we had, it was shortly, like 2 months afterwards, that came out for the first time. We had it, and like, this is exactly what our beer should have tasted like.
So you guys were going for that flavor, and I stumbled on that flavor.
Oh, fantastic.
So you can get into that later if you want. There's a story behind that one. Yeah,
fantastic.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about Old Irving for those who do not know, and if you don't know, you're missing out.
Yeah, and for any of your listeners who may not know the area, obviously Old Irving is the neighborhood that we are currently in. I mean, just barely, though. No. So a lot of people get confused. They'll drive here and be like, you're not on Irving Park, or you're not, it's like, no, it's Old Irving because that's the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We are actually on Montrose. Sidekicks, the 4 a.m. karaoke bar. Across the street is Mayfair, technically. So within feet,
this is like
still
it's like my actual neighborhood where I live. We're two different wards.
Right.
On my side of the street, I have one alderman. The other side of the street has a totally different alderman.
Yeah, Chicago makes a lot of sense.
So
this is Old Irving Park. Some cool little bits of history about Irving Park. It is actually named after Washington Irving, famous writer who wrote Sleepy Hollow. And so we have a little quote on the wall: "They who drink beer will think beer." That's from Washington Irving.
I'm learning a lot about this neighborhood.
Thank you for filling me in on where I live.
Yeah, there's there's just cool little tidbits, when you go up to the bar in the tap room, that the bar top is all like old train car flooring because we're right down the way from the Blue Line, but also Greyland Station, the original station that kind of connected Old Irving Park to downtown, is the whole reason that people kind of migrated out here and kind of started up kind of like a second downtown area with the Six Corners, where Milwaukee and Cicero and all that meet right there in Irving Park.
The real Six Corners.
The OG Six Corners, which, I'm sure it was really impressive in its heyday, and they're always like trying to rebuild it. The new, they're just trying to like make it back to what it was. But when we moved into this area, I mean, it was just really apparent that there was one dense population. I mean, like if you look back in all these neighborhoods, there's tons of beautiful homes, there's tons of people, and more importantly, people in our demographic.
Absolutely.
People who like beer. And also, like there's a lot of great stuff around here, but we felt like the one piece it was kind of missing was exactly what we do, which is kind of like, brew pub a little elevated with some like, craft beer, and everyone should have that joint like right down the street from them. And then, so we opened up in 2016. Very unsure of ourselves and how it was going to go. And that night we did like 800 covers or something like that. And we're like, oh, okay.
Perfect.
I think people were pumped. Yeah. And then, we kind of started off on the track of, all right, we're a brew pub, and we're going to make, great food, great beer. And then we kind of designed the brewery, though, to be able to produce. I think it was kind of one of those things where we put it there just to be like, maybe people will like our beer enough where we can put it in cans and maybe try to distribute it. And then, we started getting some traction, and then sure enough, now we're distributing. We're in all of Illinois, all of Wisconsin. Matthew's helping to grow our brand here and doing an amazing job. We're about to hire another salesperson.
Wow.
Obviously, it's been awesome. So.
Oh. All right. Well, that's it for the interview. See you guys later.
So
no, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So what was your kind of going into the history of you personally? What's your history with beer?
Sure. Well, it's been an arduous journey with beer. It started at a very young age in an abusive way. Where I'd drink 30 racks of Busch Light and then fill them with bricks and put them on sidewalks in East Lansing, Michigan, and wait for a drunk to come along and kick it. And then I would scream bricks in box until I puked from laughing. That's actually not untrue. But I love craft beer. I'm from Michigan originally. I moved out here 12 years ago at this point. Being from Michigan, you get your first sip of like Oberon or Two Hearted. For me, it was like my first love was this place called Crunchies in East Lansing, and they had schooners, like these big freaking mugs of this craft beer that was chocolatey and decadent and high ABV. So they only let you have one, but I knew the bartender, so he let me drink more than one. And it was Dragon's Milk, and I was like, oh, it's so good. And I didn't know craft beer could do this, and so it was on special. I think it was like $8 for one of those things.
Wow.
And I would drink two and be whoop.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's amazing. I only spent $16, and I don't remember much.
Wasted.
And my mouth tastes like chocolate and bourbon. This is a fun thing. So that's kind of where it started. I had like a childhood friend whose dad put on the Michigan craft beer festival down in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and he was an avid home brewer, and he always had beer on tap, and I just was like, he was like a Renaissance man. I thought that was just like the coolest thing to be able to drink Lewis's beer, and so I always like really admired that stuff. And then you kind of skip down the road a little bit. Wasn't great in school, so obviously I did the thing that people who aren't great in school do. I went to culinary school.
There you go.
I got into a trade profession, which, hey man, no sweat. Came out to Chicago. I'd worked in kitchens all over Michigan, kind of working lines wherever I could, busting suds, doing the whole, that whole thing that chefs do. You start when you're like really, really young to help your parents out and stuff, and you got, we're a poor family, and so, I worked my way through, and then my buddy Garrett, whose dad was like the editor-in-chief at the Chicago Tribune. I'm working at a country club with this dude, and he's like a genius, and he's like got his own website. He's making this amazing food, and I was like, this guy knows what's up. Yeah. And he was thinking about going back to Chicago. I was like, hey, I want to go to Chicago. I like it there. I have friends there. Let's go. He's like, I'm going to culinary school. I'm like, which one? And he's like, this one, Kendall College. I was like, all right, I'm in. And so I came out, went to culinary school. He linked up with a restaurant called Moto. I followed him there. Moto ended up being this like an amazing experience. Like we got a Michelin star eventually while I was there. I worked my way up from the kitchen I was actually a lead line cook on the meat station of a fine dining restaurant as an intern.
Wow.
So I was a 6-month intern. At the end of that 6 months, I was kind of like lead line cook. And then their cross-training program, they put me on FOH. And so then eventually I served, bartended, became a manager. Then it was a GM, and then I'm helping.
Literally running the entire gamut there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then eventually I was doing like the books, and like, you know, I'm helping Homaro Cantu run his empire. And one day the dude just looked at me and he's like, "What is it you want to do?" And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm the GM of a fine dining restaurant. There's not many more demanding jobs except for the chef of that establishment,
Right.
because clearly those guys are the hardest working people, right?
Absolutely.
And I was still taking my mornings and going and apprenticing with breweries. I had this like secret love affair with beer, and I had an area where I could do it. My boys at Flossmoor Station, Bjorn, Quinn, and Bill. If you don't know those names, you probably should. They're amazing guys. Bjorn is Bjorn Johnson is like one of the main brewers at Goose Island now. He's absolutely amazing. Quinn does R&D for them, and he wears a lot of hats. And then Bill was actually the director. Bill Savage was the director of the entire barrel warehouse.
Oh, wow.
For a while. So he was running that whole thing. Now he just went out to Michigan to work for Virtue Cider. But these amazing people like trained me in the morning. So I'd go in the mornings, early as hell, mash in, dough in, grain out, put on a suit, put on my earpiece, and go and serve people overpriced food. That's how I learned the craft.
Wow.
And then, and I did it for, free beer, which was great. And then eventually Omar was like, "Yeah, you really like beer. What do you want to do with that?" And I was like, "There's like no brew pubs." At that time, there was very few brew pubs in Chicago. I said, "I think there's a huge opportunity in Chicago because I feel like it's like trembling. Like there's all these breweries, right? You got like Pipeworks, and you got all these guys who are like, building the foundation of what I think is going to be really big." And I'm like, "We should, get in there and do the food and the beer thing together."
Yeah.
And he's like, "All right, let's do it." And so we started that path, and eventually met my business partner Jeff, who just happened to live right across the street from him. After going down the road of a ton of different investors and different people who would, sign up, then log out and everything else. And this guy Jeff just kind of, he had it. And when I mean it, I mean money. No, but he also had like this really great personality that was clearly something that me and Omar were missing. We're both creatives. We're both, dreamers. And I think Jeff had that more organized, kind of approach to things. And I think he actually saw it as something bigger than either Omar or myself could have ever seen it. Because we wanted to start a small system, way smaller than this. Mm-hmm. And Jeff is like, "Why? We should make it bigger." Yeah. Like, he's like, "Just in case," And he kind of wanted to err on that side, which, two dudes. Omar was basically homeless when he was a child. I was a poor kid. We come into things, with a shoestring budget and kind of have to think small with hoping that it goes bigger and then grow from there. And Jeff is just like, "Yeah, don't worry about that. Let's go." And he organized some investors and got them together, and Omar passed away.
Oh.
We weren't sure if we were going to keep the business going or not. We did. After one drunken night at what is now Twisted Hippo, but at the time was...
one of the 12
Break
breweries.
Room?
Break Room.
Break
I always want to say Breakthrough too.
Yeah.
Break Room Brewery. And it was kind of like our battle call. And all the investors were amazing. We sat down with them, and they stuck around. And I guess now the rest is history. So that's my full history with beer.
That was the best run through of someone's history. We've asked, we've had plenty of interviews. I'm not knocking anybody else that's been on the show. Sure. We love them all. We love all of you that have been on the show. Thanks a lot. But that was very very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate hearing all of that. There's a lot of history summed up in a nice long. We didn't have to say anything except for okay. Sounds good. I like that. And I'm sure people who listen to us sometimes
they're
like
ready
to not hear
someone
us
else.
talk.
You can ask my wife. I'm a good talker.
So we should
Much
have you
to
on
her
the show.
chagrin.
We should have you on the show more often. Got it. Wow, that's a lot to kind of take in, but that's we're thrilled that you're here. We
Thank you.
all three of us, we really do love what you guys do here at Old Irving. And I will say, I'm not taking away from me or you, Brandon, but I do know that Clark really is like a huge fan of
That's
Older.
awesome.
Yeah,
I'd
Father's
love to
Days,
hear that.
birthdays. I'm looking
Yeah.
at my check-ins here. I'm like, oh, I was here on that important day. I was here on that important day. And oh, right, I
that's
remember
awesome.
that one where I.
Well, we appreciate it, and it never gets old hearing it. You know, I think because it was such a long and arduous journey to get where we were. I mean, I just mentioned some of the stuff. You know, there was still so much so many other little stories involved in that just were really, really tough. I mean, we could talk about the last year, we could talk about all this stuff, but to hear that someone likes our beer is just awesome. And it's never not shocked. When we put out Krampus this year, we made twice the amount. And my business partner is like me in a lot of ways, where we're like, well, we don't want to we made plans for the extra liquid because are we really going to sell it all? And I think after that first hour of it being on Osner, we were like, okay, cool.
Good thing we made all of that.
Yeah, because we don't really get outside of these four walls. We kind of have this square 3 or 4 miles that we kind of operate in, but we don't really understand the outside world. It's a bunch of numbers and Matthew coming in and telling us about stuff. It's
Someone's got to be able to dissect it all.
That's right, exactly right.
I
Yeah.
feel like I just get to tell a lot of stories that you guys are like, sure, that happened.
We believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would, circling back around just to the building here.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the first choice of where you guys wanted to be? Were there other neighborhoods that you guys were looking at?
There probably were. We looked at a couple of other spaces. This one was the one, though, I think Jeff, myself, and Omar, when he was still with us, we looked at, and it just felt like a brewery.
Sure.
It was in the neighborhood. The actual LLC name is Trip Brewery LLC because Omar and Jeff live on Trip.
Oh, nice.
And eventual partners are of ours, Matthias Mergis and Folk Art, who did an astounding job helping us open up and get going. Matthias and his business partner Brian live right down the street on Trip. I'm the odd one out. I'm also the youngest, so I was living in an apartment. I'm chef, right? Working for free at breweries, working for beer doesn't really afford you the kind of housing that those cats had on that block. But I did live very close, so I was living in Irving Park as well. And when we all got here, we all loved the neighborhood. We knew it intimately, right? We knew the area. The only thing about it was, there's not a lot around here. I mean, it's a lot of, shops for cars. We had Sidekicks across the street, which I adore. And then we have the Blue Line. And we know those things are smart. And we know, and Jeff, his background is in real estate. And I think, if you're going to invest in an area, this is a smart area to invest in, whether you're a homeowner or a business owner, because you're right along the Blue Line. You're right near the airport. It's kind of right in between the suburbs and downtown, so you can kind of catch both. Which makes for some very interesting kind of array of humans. You don't get when you're in Logan Square, you get a very specific kind of human being. When you're out here, you gotta get everybody. So, but the neighborhood is so awesome. I mean, between the churches and kind of how they play into the neighborhood, Father Dom down at St. Ed's, we work together a lot on things. He loves Belgian beer and Trappist style ales. Of course. He's a priest, So that part's really cool. St. Viator, who's extremely connected to the neighborhood. They do the beer and barbecue challenge every year, so we're very, intensely connected to that. And it's kind of the first time in my life I've really had that sense of community in a neighborhood ever in my life. I never thought it would be. I thought it'd be when I bought a home or something like that. I bought a home. I don't even know my neighbors' names. I know one guy is a cop, the other person's Polish. Well, that's not true. I know Chris. Chris is awesome. You always want to know the cop. But around here, I know everyone's names. I've never felt more a part of something. So it's also really, really heartwarming to kind of know all these people intimately and to see them come in and enjoy and be thankful that you're here. And we saw it no more beautifully than when the pandemic hit. And we were doing curbside pickup, and it was a freaking Portillo's. We had cars wrapped down the street. I'm running. I wish I could get those steps in still. I lost 20 pounds running out to cars. It was terribly stressful because this is not built to be a Portillo's. We had never done anything like that, and we were losing our minds, and we're terribly inefficient. But each one of them would say something super nice. We just want you to be here when this is all over. And I was damn, that was pretty cool because it was really hard, but you get those little, the neighborhood taking care of you, So, and the building itself, you can kind of see as you look around the beer hall. Obviously, I'm from Michigan. I like beer gardens. I think we all do. We don't have an outside space, so we got the big glass door that opens up. the garden lights that Rachel Kral from FC Studio was brilliant enough to put in to kind of tie that in. And that's Matthias's wife. So she does all kinds of design. She designed like Own an Engine, Billy Sunday.
Oh, wow.
She's just got a great eye for design. And with this, it was very minimal touches, right? Like we kept a lot of the original tile work. I don't know what that was. That could have been like a bathroom back in the day, but it's just like this patch of weird tile. But
I've never noticed that patch tile.
yeah, it's just kind of there. And then the brick here is what they call Chicago brick. So the same brick that's inside of this building, you can actually see on the outside of that building. It's the most common type of brick in Chicago. And then, of course, you got these dramatically high ceilings, which thank God for that, because I am out of space on the floor.
Yeah.
And I just got a lift that can lift things up really high. So,
Sweet. Even
so I'm
better.
going to be storing things upward. And then, of course, you have the tap room, kind of more of the bar feel. This is kind of more of the family feel. And then we used to have a game room. Now you'll see it's very full of cans, and it's not kind of an extension of the brewery.
I was going to ask about that. I noticed that there was like, oh, so we're not playing bags
Yeah,
and
I was
sitting
about to
over
say,
there
my
anymore.
sons are going to be.
Yeah, your sons are going to be upset.
I know, it sucks because the kids love that area. But, during the pandemic, we had, I think, 3 beers in cans. I think we had like Della, Beezer, and Ancient Magic had just dropped at that time. And it became pretty apparent pretty fast when people weren't going out anymore that the drinking didn't stop at home.
No.
And it escalated. And so it was like, oh, God, we need to package more beer. And so I was spending a lot of my time running food and doing all that stuff and trying to make sure that my team wasn't bent over in fear from an infectious disease and, kind of putting myself out there and trying to run as much food as possible to when people got a little bit more comfortable then going back and then being like, okay, we need to redesign this whole thing. And so this big beer hall that's meant for seating people got cleared out. We had just stacks and stacks and stacks of grain and cans, and I had ordered ahead, and we just started cranking. And that's when OIB really changed in to kind of what it is right now, which is, manufacture and starting to put cans up there. So
It's interesting to hear because we've checked in with a handful of breweries and how they handled everything throughout the pandemic. One being your neighbor's Lake Effect,
Clint.
Clint.
That's such a good dude.
Yeah, we talked to him a couple times during the pandemic as well. And just hearing how everybody had to adjust, and I'm not saying that everything was positive, but something like growth is such a nice thing to hear. It kind of changed things for you guys in a positive. And just finding like having to adapt has made it seems like a lot of these breweries that we've talked to just forced themselves into something that maybe they weren't necessarily ready for but wanted to do.
Right.
And a positive has come out of that. So that's awesome to hear, and I hope that for a lot of other businesses as well.
And I reckon brewers and people who start breweries are usually pretty industrious folk.
Absolutely.
So you give us some lemons, we'll make some really weird lemonade. So
Not just regular lemonade.
yeah, it's like alcoholic,
Slightly fizzy. Maybe there's another fruit in there. There's a variant.
probably puree. Yeah. Cool.
So as far as when you're starting off the brewery, I guess my question is, what was there an idea or, what was your idea for like the type of beer that you wanted to put out? Did you have like a certain style that you wanted to stick with, or did you want to just kind of run the gauntlet and kind of just try everything?
So that's a really good question. I think probably the latter. I think probably just wanted to run the gauntlet and try everything and see what stuck. We started off before we ever opened. Jeff bought this like really awesome rig. It was basically the same as our brew house. It's a 3-vessel brew house that was on the stand from More Beer. It was awesome. It had a bunch of automation, something I would never buy as a home brewer because it was like $7,000.
Yeah.
But we set it up in Jeff's garage, and basically he had like pegboards in there and everything, and I just set it up like a brewery.
Yeah.
Him and his wife still joke their garage has never been so clean because I would clean the floors at the end of the day just like a brewery, the whole nine, because I was starting to get paid at that point to start doing R&D for when the brewery finally opened. So I was like, I'm going to take it seriously. And
Absolutely.
I would come in and I would brew proper beers and all that stuff. And his daughter Avery would help me out once in a while with like cleaning pots and stuff. And so we kind of came up with like our original 6 in that garage. And it was kind of ran the gamut from darker things that were maybe a little bit popular at the time, waning on almost not being popular, like a black IPA. But
we have a love for black IPAs on the show.
I actually like black IPAs. If they're done right.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think that is I think we've said that recently.
Yeah.
If they're done right, they're really good.
Yeah, the bad ones always like seem to dry out your palate like a freaking desert between the roast malt and the hops. You're like,
No thanks.
there's nothing thirst quenching about that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many beers actually stuck around from that time. Like we still have Della, which we created at Jeff's house. It was the first lager I ever brewed, and which we know it's ale or lager, whatever you want to call it. And then Sentinel, which was our IPA, which we kind of call the protector of the brewery because that's the one we brought to our investors. So that's still here. So there's, and then Rat Pack was supposed to be a part of the original six. I ended up not brewing because it was like really cool an idea, really kind of complicated to brew. But that one still, makes an appearance every now and then. So, but it's funny, like we didn't really have, I think, an identity when we opened up at all. Like we didn't know who we were.
Yeah.
I knew that I had a culinary background. Other people knew that too. So people knew you'd see some culinary ingredients. But really, it was a matter of just like trying out a lot of stuff and learning over those first couple of years before something hit. And what really helped us kind of create like a destination was. It was one of our business partners, Rod Zach, who is old friends with Jeff and is just a really great guy. One of the investors lives right down the street from here. He's a huge beer nerd. This guy travels all over the country for beer. He's the guy who waits in lines. I was never that type of beer nerd. I liked beer, but I liked beer I could buy at the grocery store, not waiting in lines.
That's me.
Yeah, so he was this guy who was bringing all these hazies to me, and I was just like, what the heck is this? And at the time, I was a purist before I really knew what I was doing, and I was just like, I'm not making any hazies or whatever. I did stupid hazies. And then I had a couple, and I was like,
I was going to get into that. Yeah, I'm glad you're transitioning.
I was
to that.
like, wait, what? This is delicious. And I really started getting into them, and he kept on bringing me. So I had my favorite breweries that I really liked that made them. And I said, okay, I'm going to make a hazy. But I did it begrudgingly, and I called it trendy with an I.
That's right.
It was between that and Lemmings. I was, being very kind of thick-headed about it. And my original idea was for every new one that we made, we'd add an I. And Jeff hated that idea, but I wanted eventually, like, if we got to 10, just to have, like, 10 eyes on it. It was trendy. It became pretty apparent pretty quick that that's what people wanted. People were coming in for each release, and some of them would drop clear. Some of them were not right. It was really an experiment that everyone was willing to be a lab rat for and give me their honest feedback. And no one seemed to mind, and that was the coolest part. So the guests were giving me real-time feedback, whether it was on Untappd or directly to my face, and eventually it became clear that had to become a beer, right? So we wanted to get the name trademark, because at the time we thought we had to get every name trademarked.
Yeah.
We had a really good lawyer friend, Brian Tihan, who was part of Folk Art, who's just, you gotta get these things trademarked. And I had a bunch of adults in the room telling me, I gotta get things trademarked. So I'm like, all right, we gotta get things trademarked. So we tried to get that thing trademarked. There's a freaking wine company up on the north side here that I've never heard of called Vin Trendy. Super cool people. I called them up and I said, hey, apparently your name is too close to my name to get trademarked. Can I trademark it? And they were like, absolutely. It didn't matter. The patent, the trademark office was like, hell no. That's still too close. And we're like, all right, back to the drawing board. And so I think I was looking up, Jeff is a very organized person, like I said, so he's got a spreadsheet for everything. It's an ongoing joke here at the brewery, like, oh, you got a spreadsheet for that? He did. He had a spreadsheet of names, every name you could think of, and he would just add new things that he would hear out in public or whatever, and I found like this old-timey name for the nose, which I thought was cool from like the 1920s, and it was Beezer. I'll hit you in the Beezer, see? And I thought it was kind of cool. It's a lot of aroma hops in that beer, so we landed on Beezer, and I said to Jeff, I remember when we were coming up with the name, I said, Jeff, you just got to say it a bunch. And so like Jeff was at home working out, and he's like, Beezer on his phone, like recording it, and then he was like walking the street, Beezer. And I was just like, because he wasn't sure, so I was like, that's weird. But all right, and that's kind of where we landed on it. And then you fast forward a little bit of time. We kept on like tweaking that recipe, and just like it all of a sudden it became all the things I loved about brewing craft beer in the first place, which was you're always chasing something. You're making like these tiny little details and turning the knobs, and you're learning more stuff. And I was spending like nights, like I'm not kidding when I say I was losing sleep over this beer because I wanted it to be so good. Right. And I'm talking to the OGs. I'm talking to the guys who made like the original hazies. Roger Cuzales, right? When he came up with what's the name of it now? The trademark infringement beer. It's not Squirt, but it's like the Squeeze It. When he was over at, and people were like lining up for Squeeze It, and BJ that was over at Forbidden Root when they were making their OG hazies. Like I was talking to these guys, and each person had a different thing, and then you read these articles where all these brewers are trying to explain exactly how it's happening, but in my mind, I'm like, they're all brewers, so they it's a little bit of science and a little bit of bullshit. And so I keep on like falling down weird rabbit holes. I still remember Pretty Haze Machine when I made that thing, and it dropped out beautifully clear, and I was like, the first time I'd ever put haze in the name of a beer, and I was like, shit, damn it.
I think the same thing happened to one of the first hazy beers I tried to do, because I was like you, I was not sold on hazy beers when they were first coming out. I'm like, this is a gimmick. I'm not interested. And one of my relatives, Paul, I was brewing with at the time, he's like, you got to try them, man. You got to try them. So I finally did it, and I was like, okay,
I get it.
I get it. I get what's good about it. But yeah, the first attempt I had, it was not hazy at all. And it wasn't until we talked to Eric Flores over at Whiskey.
He was another person I talked to all the time. He's amazing.
He gave me the most, the best, advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for myself. Best advice. Thank you. Best advice on how to not only get it hazy, but why it's hazy, and why you're getting, what you're actually trying to obtain, which is that silky, smooth mouthfeel. Yeah,
exactly that. Right. We're always chasing that thing, and I think for me, at Moto, one thing that we did there that if you don't know what Moto is, it's a fine dining restaurant, and it was what we call avant-garde or like molecular gastronomy cuisine. The whole point of the experience was to give you something that looked like one thing but tasted like something completely different. And once I got myself in that mindset, and I said, I need to make juice.
Yeah.
So what is juice? And I literally took like a refractometer and I took orange juice to find out how sweet it was. And then it was about viscosity. What color is orange juice? How do I get that color in terms of SRM to my recipe? And it was literally just trying to emulate juice, right? Because that's really what you're trying to do. And to get the kind of sweetness that you want, at that time, I just didn't want to use lactose to get there. So I started just knowing what we know, right? I was talking to Lance from Omega, getting information from him. So I introduced some dextrin malts, and I'm doing high mashing, and now we're talking about chloride to sulfate ratios, and I'm just learning all this stuff. And we had a pretty good product. Beezer was pretty good. It wasn't great. And so I remember in 2019, I made one last little touch, and it was these two big things that I did, and that was I upped the chloride to sulfate ratio, and I changed the amount of dextrin malt I was doing. It was something like that. And in those two changes, that product that came out, we really loved, and people responded really well to it. I'll never forget, Bob from Alarmist was down here, and he goes, 2019 gold. And he was drinking. I was like, shut up. Because they had just won gold in 2018. Right. They were the first gold to medal ever on the hazy category. I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, that's going to happen, because it's a little bit of luck, right? It's a little bit of luck and a little bit of talent in those competitions. Absolutely. And sure as hell we go. And I mean, it was so funny when we were at GABF. I took my team because I just wanted this new team that I was kind of creating and putting together to go out to Denver just to see Denver, because it's beautiful. I loved the first time I went, and I didn't win a single award, 2017. So this is 2 years later. Didn't enter anything in 2018. 2019, took the cats just to show them a good time, get them really high and be up in the mountains. And I sat us in the very, very back of that auditorium, and we're watching, Kevin Carey win gold on his, Imperial Pajamas barrel age. Yep. And I'm freaking out for Kevin. I'm so happy for him. And we get to the end, and of course, we haven't won anything yet, and hazy's the last category. So we're packing up, we're getting ready to leave, and everything else like that. So I'm getting my coat around, and I put us in the back so we could be closer to, bars and beer and getting out, because I hate crowds. And they say Beezer, and I'm kind of go numb for a second, and I'm like, someone else called their beer Beezer?
Also a hazy, how dare you?
That's not us,
That can't be real. And then all of a sudden, Tim, who's here right now, just does his Tim dude, rises up from his seat, and I'm like, oh, this is happening. And then finally, we're sitting there all hugging each other, and the guy behind us is like, you should go get your award. And then salmon upstream against humans because everyone's leaving. Yeah, right. That's the last category. We're walking up, excuse me, I have to get my excuse me.
We just won.
So we go up there to accept our medal, and no one's there anymore. But it was cool, So me, Will, Tim, and Brittany, who was our salesperson at the time, up on stage, and it was awesome. Get off the stage, and first question I'm asked is if it had lactose in it.
Of course, yeah.
Josh from the Tribune comes up, and he's just like, just real quick, is there lactose in that?
Jeez.
Really, dude?
Thanks, Josh.
Yes. No, there's not, Josh. Yeah. There's so no lactose in Beezer. So that obviously, I think that's a really long way of answering your question of like that's where the identity started, and we were like, all right, cool, and then it was me and Jeff sitting down like, what kind of styles do we want to do that we're going to actually put out to market. Now the stuff we do here is I break it down like this. We do your classics classically, and we try to like really stick to it. If we're going to do a Reinheitsgebot beer, we're going to do it Reinheitsgebot. It's going to be proper. We're going to lager it. We're going to pour over it because that's what brewers drink. When we make lagers, it's like dressing up for your friends. You know, you're I don't necessarily need other people looking at me. I just want my friends to think I look good tonight. It's a little effeminate.
That's a funny way of putting it, but I get it.
But it's true though. It's like when we make our lagers, we're making to impress each other more than anything else. I mean, if people start liking them and start buying the crap out of them, it'll be so nice. We actually sell a ton of them at the pub, which is awesome. I think this is very much a lager area, and I think lagers are on the rise, especially when you see like these amazing lager houses opening up, whether it's Dovetail or Goldfinger. Oh my God, have you had the beers from Goldfinger?
I've had one. And
a friend just brought me a 4-pack the other day.
Everything
I'm so excited.
Get out there. Go to Goldfinger. But I mean, you have all these great lagers, so we're in a lager town.
Yeah.
And whether you know it or not, Lake Michigan actually kind of has like a perfect water profile for lagers. So this is maybe why
I didn't know that about for lagers, but I just know in general, being as a home brewer, Chicago water is like the easiest to work with.
It's so good. And so so if we're gonna do classics, we're gonna do them classically. We're gonna do some stuff that's in vogue, whether it's hazies or fruited sours, stouts, all that good stuff. And then there's a paddle your own canoe area where I really want to kind of still be able to experiment, because that's still a big part of who I am. Like I want to kind of like push the boundaries a little bit and make myself uncomfortable.
Sure.
That recent Gamel-hearted beer that we made with our friends to the far north, Hammerheart Brewing, that was so far outside. I'd never used smoked malt before.
Smoked malt scares me.
Scares the crap out of me. Well, it's not something that's friendly to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You've got to be very careful with it.
Yeah.
And I think they sensed my fear. Like they could smell it. They're like, we use smoked malt in all of our things, and I'm like, Austin is like in a black metal band, and they very much don't care about what you think. They're gonna make beer that they like, and if you want to drink it, drink it. If not, fuck off. Like they don't care, and I love that about them. But I'm in Chicago, and it's a very competitive beer market, and so it's like, you make choices like that, and it's always very scary. And you know what, though? Once in a while, you just got to go for it. And we went for it, and the beer, we made a barley wine that was 12.5%. It dried out, and I was like, screw it. If we're going to go that far, let's use this new yeast I haven't used before, and let's throw some weird mushrooms at it that taste like maple syrup. And they were like, okay, we didn't mean to go that far, dude. I'm like, while we're at it, we're also going to buy some fucking maple syrup barrels and some port barrels, and we're going to double age that shit and blend it. And they're like, all right, dude, you can calm down now. So, yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
It actually, the base is doing okay. It's usually smoked beers just get ripped apart. No matter how good they are. But people have been pretty amenable to it, and there's some guy, you always have like these like local craft beer pages where, these guys always give their 2 cents on it. And someone actually said, Gamel-hearted is fire, and I couldn't believe it. And of course, every comment under that was like, meh, it was okay. It was kind of smoky, bad. And I was like, I just kind of came in and I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell them exactly what we did to make that. Because I think if you have that perspective of like,
it changed,
yeah, we're like, hey, you guys seem to like mostly like our beers. This is what we did though, and it was very fun and very uncomfortable. And I gave them like an overly you're a craft beer page.
Yeah.
You want to know about craft beer? Here's a big ass paragraph. I'm going to take the time to show you guys exactly what we did.
I have a hard time being. I can't imagine what it would be like being, having a brewery and seeing, especially just on threads and Facebook pages like that. Me personally, as someone who enjoys just buying beer, I get tired of it. I'm like, I don't give a shit about what you guys are saying most of the time.
I think I learned something a long time ago. I've been screamed at in every language, right? Because I've worked in kitchens my whole life. I've had frying pans thrown at me, knives, Yeah, I've had one of my chefs used to take plates that I would make if I was up late with whoever was on my station. We smash them in sinks and stuff. So it's like, and if someone wants to give me their lighthearted feedback on a media site, that's fine with me. And I think I always told my team members when I was in restaurants, and I tell people here too, it's like, look, we all don't like these things. It's not easy to take feedback or criticism, and a lot of it is bullshit, but if you sit there and you don't allow it to be such a negative in your life, and you can use it as a tool, like you can look for trends, and you can look for things that maybe a lot of people are saying, and it can really guide you. You don't want to let it over-guide you, and you certainly don't want to go chasing beers that maybe you're not passionate about or something like that, but definitely use it as a tool for growth instead of letting it get the best of your ego.
So you guys making a brewed IPA anytime soon?
No,
okay.
Absolutely not.
I'm glad that trend went away.
Yeah, people told me about it, and I was like, bone dry. If there's something I know about the Midwest, people don't like bone dry things. These kids were raised on Fago and like super sweet drinks.
RC?
Yeah, and RC Cola and stuff. I was like, this is not the area for dry. But yeah, I wouldn't let that stuff. It was actually funny. One of the guys from one of those pages, he comes in here all the time. He's a really good guy. He's been a craft beer lover forever. Was sitting at the bar with me one day, and we were just chatting, and this guy kind of inserted himself into the conversation, just started giving me his feedback on some of the beers that have changed over time and how he didn't like it. Mm-hmm. I just sat there and I was kind of agreeing with him, and Abel keeps looking over at me like,
you're gonna lose some shit.
He's got, his mouth is agape. He's just like, oh man, it's about to go down. I was just like, no, dude, it's all good. I was like, what did you like about the last one? I kept asking questions, and Abel was like, I can't believe you just sat there and took it. And I was like, what? He was just giving me like feedback. I was like, it's all good. And the guy didn't even ask who I was. That's the funniest thing. Like, he didn't know I'm a guy making the beer, so I just kept on listening to him, and then eventually like answering his questions enough where he's like, wait, are you the brewer? And I'm like, I don't really brew it anymore. I mean, I write the recipes, but the guy back there brews it. So, I mean, he'd probably be the one that would get offended more than me.
Well, I before the question I'm asked, did you guys have, I feel like I'm going.
No, I had many questions that he just kept rolling with and answered them without even me asking.
Like I said, I'm a talker. I'm sorry.
No, this is going to be so great for me to edit. Thank you, because I don't have to do much. I do have a question. But we were talking about all the other beers, and one of our favorite beers, we kind of touched on it, was Krampus.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get into that and how that came to be.
Sure.
And I, as you said, you guys made more this year, and that's great. Mm-hmm. We and I know some other people that we follow on social media feel like it's cool that it's still kind of like an under the radar beer that's just like, I feel like, cool for our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Obviously we would love to see it, to a certain degree, love to see it, where everybody, I like that I can get my hands on it.
Yeah.
Brandon gets to see it. But how did that beer come to be? Because we feel like it's just an amazing barrel aged stout, what you guys do with the variants, and I feel like it's very underrated. And
Yeah,
we should get some more.
Well,
props.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Krampus,
especially with being just like in Chicago. I mean,
totally
barrel aged city.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I think that's probably why we fly under the radar in a lot of ways. But yeah, Krampus, was a thing I had originally made. It was like one of those tie-ins where we talked about the fact that I got a culinary background, and I really wanted to introduce like the food beer thing. And I think there's no better place to do that than in the dark beer realm. And I don't know if pastries were exactly like crazy popular at that time or anything like that. And I wasn't really going for that. I was going for just a really nice dark beer. But the whole idea was, basically Santa gets cookies and milk. Krampus gets a really high ABV beer that tastes like cookies and milk. So the whole grain bill was created around a chocolate chip cookie, just a classic chocolate chip cookie. So you've got lactose, you've got your milk for the cookies and milk piece, or the butter, or whatever you want to say in the cookie recipe. You've got chocolate malt, which is your chocolate, obviously. You've got your at the time I was using crystal malt. I don't anymore, but that was kind of acting as like your brown sugar area. And then really meaty base malt, like high grade, like cake flour or something like that. And that was our Maris Otter base malt. When we first made it, it was like 6%, and then we made like a higher ABV version. We actually, starting to barrel age it was only because we happened upon some barrels from our friends at Few. So the first year was in Few whiskey barrels.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they were tiny. They're like the 15-gallon, little barrels, and I lined them up along the fence on the floor. When it was cute when we used to have floor space back there. And we really liked what came. I mean, we were all surprised. We had like a 2-head HDP filler that we were filling off of. And, we had introduced, I think maybe, we only had like a couple of different styles. And, we didn't even have a plan for like how we were going to get it into people's hands. We just said, okay, we're going to put it on social media that we're going to sell it on this day. Each bottle was hand dipped, and, people came in, and my friend Aaron calls me, who's like my wife's best friend's husband, and he's a huge beer guy. He's like, hey man, when does the line start? When we released it. And I was like, what? No, dude, you just come in and buy it.
Yeah.
And so like that day, all of a sudden, I'm like, all right, we have to actually like maybe think about this a little bit. And sure enough, like a little line formed, and people like lined up for it and got it. And I was like, okay, well that ruled.
Yeah.
Let's do that again. And so each year we've tried to kind of change the recipe a little bit to be different. This last year, I've got this amazing brewer. It's his day off today, but his name's Will Robertson, and he is very science minded. He's a little bit older. He's seen some things. He's been a home brewer forever, and we had been talking to like some other brewers about this boil down method, kind of make a more viscous wort, and things like that. And he'd kind of mathed it out, and I started kind of picking these new ingredients that are going to add more chocolate profile. So I try to get like more and more chocolatey every year, and so we've just kind of been making little tweaks as we go along. But this year, 2021's brew was probably my favorite tasting wort of them all. It was super viscous. We introduced some chocolate rye this year. The barrels that we got in this time, we just filled them, are these really awesome Elijah Craig barrels, where each one has like a cup to like 2 cups of whiskey in the barrel, like when they were super wet. You know, and so yeah, when we popped the bungs on, like they almost hit the ceiling. You know, that's how pressurized and how put together they were. So we did that. Some barrel stuff that we did, like we have some rum barrels that I'm definitely backing up with more whiskey barrels just in case it doesn't work out. But the plan is to take these 4 square rum barrels, the whitehead ones that you see down there, and do like a cocoa Krampus. But we'll see. You know, if it doesn't work out, we can maybe do something else with it. But we're definitely starting to have fun. Now that I have my stacker, we're going to be kind of maybe growing that Krampus brand a little bit. But we're also going to be introducing some more barrel-aged beer because I'm like obsessed with it now. Cool. And so I want to do more like, you know, barrel-aged barley wines, barrel-aged stouts, barrel-aged quads, you know, all that good stuff, and just keep stacking barrels. I was lucky enough to get Marty's ear the other day from Revolution when they did their release, and that dude, he just is so nice. He like was giving me tips, and he was here for the Krampus release like that night. I saw him, and I like beelined right to him. Like I was in the middle of a conversation, and someone was like, "What the hell, man?" I was like, "Sorry, I gotta go." And I sat down with him, and I started talking to him because he just makes such great barrel-aged beer, and so yeah, it's been a fun kind of experiment. And then all the variants are just plays on cookies that I like. Like this year's peanut butter no bake. My mom used to make like a no bake cookie with peanut butter and the oats and everything, and it already has oats, so all the bases are there's vanilla, there's chocolate, there's everything else. It just made sense to introduce some peanut butter. And so if you want, here's the secret. If you want to know what kind of variants I'm going to do of Krampus, follow my stouts throughout the year, because that's where I kind of test out all the variants to make sure that they're going to work. Because I'm not going to be experimenting on Krampus. So, Ancient Magic. That makes sense. Ancient Magic, you saw the peanut butter there. You'll see coconut stuff coming out, things like that. And so this year, I think next year, I think we're so obsessed with just doing like a nude Krampus. I think Maplewood actually had the same idea. They just did neat. I thought that was a good name for it because all I could think is like Krampus nude, and I'm like, you got to get that out of your head. You need a better word. And Maple was like neat, and I'm like, that's awesome. That's a way better word than mine. Like naked Krampus.
I mean, naked Krampus is kind of fun though.
Yeah. So no adjuncts at all, and just do like barrel beer and time, which I'm excited for. So yeah, man, it's been a fun journey.
Can you speak to the brandy barrels that we had this year? That was kind of unknown, but I think that's kind of where this led to and where this idea is.
Speaking of neighborhood guys, some neighborhood guys opened up a distillery called Star Union Spirits. Okay. Out in the burbs. I'm struggling on which burb it is because I don't know. I moved straight to Chicago. I did not stop at any burbs on the way in.
Peru, good move.
Oh, it's in Peru.
There you go, in Peru. That's an easy one to remember. I got to remember Peru, Illinois.
It's all right.
Anyway, these guys are amazing. Bob Windy, he comes around repping all the time, and he brought by this apple brandy barrel, and he's like, maybe you can put something in it. And I had some extra Krampus. I threw it in it, forgot about it for 2 years.
Whoa.
And John, the mailman, which is a mailman named John, who we really like. He's old hippie, big long beard, super nice guy, and always shares like massive whales with us. Finally, one day at the bar was like, hey, man, what's up with that brandy aged Krampus? And I was like, oh, I don't even know. So I went in the next room and pulled a sample for him and I said, that's awesome. I was like, we're not going to do anything to that. Yeah. And so we put it on tap, for the first couple of days, and it was kind of a fun thing for us to do. And I guess we're going to be getting in some more brandy barrels to do some more kind of cool stuff with that, and maybe throw some stouts in there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first non-adjuncted Krampus.
First one ever. Yep.
I missed that one.
It's okay. It was just on tap. Yeah, it's funny. It's like anybody who's in the industry and loves barrel aged beer really loved it, and then like other people who really like the other Krampuses with the big other flavors going on weren't as big of a fan. But I really loved the barrel character, the brandy character. I thought it was very cool. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, we were talking about some of our favorite beers that we had over the year. One that ended up on there for me was when Revolution did their apple brandy rye white. That was really good.
That was amazing.
I think apple brandy and just brandy in general is a good barrel.
Which is so funny because you would never imagine it, right? You don't think of brandy when you think of this stuff, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it tastes really good, especially when they're high ABV beers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, so that's fun.
Did you say, Clark, did you have the apple brandy?
I did not, unfortunately.
I thought you did.
No, but
you made it seem like you did.
I was just saying I'm sorry for you that you didn't get a chance to. I'm sorry for myself
I didn't try
as well.
either. I was here for the Krampus release. Like, I was here, doors open. I was walking in, luckily found a spot at the bar.
Wait, Tuesday, I was coming to pick mine up. What was it, Tuesday?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'll just show up a couple minutes after they open. No one will be here. I'll walk in, walk out, and I show up, and it's packed.
Yeah,
literally like 12:15.
You're
going,
surprised.
This is awesome.
We were surprised. My front of house staff was really surprised. That night, I think the next day, I talked to Scott, who's one of our servers. He's this really awesome guy. I'm like, hey Scott, what did your pedometer say yesterday? Because I'm like, I want to know. He's like 26,000 steps that day. Wow. He's like, yeah, and I worked a double. I was like, oh my god. So he was looking a little worse for wear on Wednesday. He's like, I'm a little tired, dude. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. You guys were rocking. And yeah, and of course we added that whole Krampus Carnival thing, which was cool. Josh, our new general manager, and this girl Jen Denreiter, who's absolutely amazing. She's one of our bartenders, but she also has this like Windy City Devil, White City Devil candle company. But she organized everyone to like make this Krampus market, which was so cool, almost like a Chris Kindle market in the back of all these artists.
Oh yeah,
they were so cool. She organized the whole thing. It went over great. Apparently, a bunch of those guys had a really great day, so we got to support local artists. It was freaking awesome. So yeah.
Well, hopefully we get to keep doing that.
I was about to say, I assume that'll come back. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and she brought like her own dude dressed as Krampus, who honestly was a little creepy, but he was fine.
It's the perfect way for that. But even we had Hexa, who now does a lot of the coffee for our beer.
All of it. They've got all of it. Parker's like my coffee BFF. Yeah. Hexa's awesome.
And people just loved him. And he brought like 30 bags in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And he had to send someone to go get more coffee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was awesome.
If you guys have never had his coffee.
I'm going to make sure that next year I have the day off so I can come in for that.
Yeah, do that.
These guys were sending me, that they were there and like, it was crazy, it's crowded. He was there drinking.
I'm lucky that I work from home.
Yeah.
I literally can just walk over here and
a lot of people
blocks away.
Yeah, and a lot of and the funny thing is like we're so easygoing and approachable. If you see us back there at any time having beers at the end of the day, which usually happens approximately at 4 p.m., people can just wander back all the time. Like it's crazy. Awesome. Like people don't even realize like we're usually drinking something weird. Someone's brought in a bottle somewhere, and we're very open and inviting. Like anyone who's around, how the craft beer industry is. Anyone who's around is getting a beer. So and especially on days like that, I'm trying to get people out of that area. So I'm like, come on in the back, set up a couple barrels, we can drink back here.
Let's go.
Yeah. So.
Well, I feel like I could sit here and keep talking because I feel like I do have more things that I do. But we're gonna wrap it up here.
Cool.
And maybe I got one more question before we do so. But
sure.
I think maybe if you're interested, would love to come back maybe sometime early. Like I said, I think this is going to be maybe the first episode of 2022. So we'll say later this year, sometime in 2022,
sure.
If you want to sit down and talk again, because we got some more I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, we're doing some big things here in 2022, really expanding.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with the last question was, what do you guys got planned for 2022?
We're finally very organized.
What?
Yeah. When we first opened up, me and Jeff were kind of doing it all, and we had people kind of helping us out on the brew pub side, but like really on the distribution side and everything like that, we didn't have the kind of help that we have now. Matthew has been absolutely key, integral piece of helping us organize, communicate with our distributors, and make sure that we're approaching the market in a smart way. Being able to do that and being hyper organized also means that I get to kind of, I know when those beers are happening, which means I've got more room for fun experimentation.
Sure.
So I'm really excited to introduce a lot of new beers. There's going to be some repeats from last year, but we're going to keep on throwing out new, creative, fun stuff. a lot of collaborations coming up. We actually have one coming up to brew next week with Phase 3. So my point is, I think I've got enough cool street cred to hang out with cool kids. So
You did it.
Goose Island was cool enough to do one with me.
Yeah.
I've had a few breweries in here, Illuminated, Maplewood, all these awesome breweries, and now I really want to continue that and really push it even harder this next year. And so it's like every brewery I come into contact with, I'm a collaboration. When are we doing a collaboration? Setting up one with more as well. So we're trying to.
Broken Bridge we had last night.
Oh,
yeah. Dude, that was awesome beer.
That turned out great, man.
was really
Clint
good.
nailed it. Yeah. And Clint, just so you know, Clint is the guy who everyone did that he's done a collaboration with everyone. Everyone who started a brewery, Clint was always the first guy to be like, let's collab. He's the nicest dude.
He is.
Go out there, support him, buy his beer. But yeah, that's kind of the whole thing behind 2022. We want to get really hyper organized. We want to get more representation out there, and then we just really want to push quality as always.
Sure.
Make the best possible product we can. So yeah.
Awesome. Which is also going to let us make even more lagers, more time in tanks.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah, we're growing our lager program.
Oh, nice.
Program. We're going from 30 barrels to 60 barrel batches of that. And we're going to be pushing those out on the market because we love them and they sell fast.
Perfect. Well, you can't go wrong with that.
That's all, I mean, and the lagers here are good because when I have people that are not craft beer drinkers, like this is the place we always come.
Yeah.
And I'll say,
That is true.
Try the lager.
Yep.
I guarantee you will like it, and it's like the gateway for them.
That's the whole reason we carry Kolsch. Yeah, we don't carry any macro here. There's no secret macro behind the bar. Sometimes there's some high life in the back, but that's for me.
Yeah.
You're not allowed.
Hey, come on.
You can't have it.
You gotta have highlight. All right, it's a champagne of beers. I love it. Well, thanks again. We really appreciate you guys taking the time today to
thanks a
talk
lot,
to
guys.
us. It
Thank
was
you guys.
awesome. We love coming here. We love your beers. Love everything you guys are doing. And I feel like this conversation was great. Now I love this place even more.
Thanks, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Hell yeah.
Brandon, love you, buddy.
Love you too, man.
Clark, I can't believe you're still here.
So many shows in a row.
That's weird. Well, we're gonna end that. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Later.
This has been The Malting Hour. Be sure to follow us on all social media by searching The Malting Hour and at themaltinghour.com. You can also follow us on social media platforms individually. Brandon can be found on Instagram as BMDub81, on Twitter, BDub81, on Untapped, BDub Drinks Beer. Tony can be found on Instagram and Untapped under Asa Phelps Chicago. On Twitter, The Asa Phelps Chicago. Clark can be found as Clarkowski on all three. Be sure to subscribe, like, and rate the show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Until next time, cheers from all of us at The Malting Hour.